All right, everybody, we are going to roll into our next panel. The next panel is titled Blockchain's Role in AI Advancement. We'll be joined by Sandeep again, DC Builder, who is a research engineer at the WorldCoin Foundation, Sewoong, who is a professor at the University of Washington and a research scientist at Google. We have Robert Drost, who is a director at EigenLayer. And this panel will be moderated by Villanueva from Sentient. Come on stage, everybody.
Hello. Testing. Cool. Thank you for joining the panel today. I think this group is very, very interesting. We have a good mix of builders, academia, people that have traditionally been in blockchain and have also a wider background. So thank you for joining us. I'll go ahead and just start off with, let's go ahead and have each of you introduce yourself and just say what brings you to this summit? Why AI and blockchain? What gets you here? Oh, you guys have mics.
Yeah, I mean, as I said, that for me the AI alignment problem, like its alignment with humanity is one of the biggest problems of our lifetimes. Probably the biggest problems of all of humanity, like in terms of man-made problems, maybe just shorter of the nuclear bomb, basically. Like if we allow this to go run amok and it is not aligned with the humanity, it can really result into bad outcomes. So yeah, that is one problem where I am very passionate about. And as we all know, that AI is like a big centralizing force, and crypto is the only technology which can bring in trustlessness and decentralization. So on a high level, it makes total sense that these two technologies should come together and create something interesting.
So hello. So I'm a research engineer at the WorldCoin Foundation. And some of the problems that I've been mostly recently been interested in are within the intersection of crypto and AI. I created the ZKML community, essentially the zero-knowledge machine learning community, like how do you make machine learning models provable? And currently I'm really excited or interested in how do you design digital identity protocols that are privacy preserving and have all these properties of decentralization and permissionlessness that we're used to in terms of like crypto and monetary decentralization. So yeah, essentially AI and provable AI is one of the core building pieces within this sort of paradigm of how do you build privacy preserving digital identity protocols. And that's sort of like what I'm currently interested in too. Yep.
Right. Hi, I'm with the Allen School of Computer Science and Engineering at the University of Washington. And I work at the intersection of privacy and decentralized machine learning. And one of the things I got interested these days is when these AI agents start to interact with each other, what are the risks that we have for the AIs that will be amplified once we start putting them in the wild, talking to each other. So I believe that blockchains and crypto are the essential tools to make transparent, resilient, and robust machine learning. And I'm here to learn. So.
All right, thank you. Yeah, really happy to be on the stage with everybody. It's a great group. So for myself, my name is Robert, and I previously was at Consensus, heading up a bunch of R&D that was going on there. And I'm currently at EigenLayer. Joined that just recently. So just motivation for me on this, literally AI and the potential problems with AI was what motivated me in 2017 to get into the blockchain space. It was incredibly exciting to me that blockchain would actually be able to solve these huge problems that I'd been worried about for 10, 15 years around where technology was heading. And the sort of mental way, and what was so motivating that I think for a lot of us here is, crypto sort of started off as this thing to recognize that while capitalism is very powerful, it's also a lion that will devour us all. And so blockchain is kind of a cage that you put around capitalism. And I think AI is the same camp. AI run amok will, it's this ferocious animal that is not controlled in the current system, and blockchain literally has the ability to put it under our use rather than having it consume us.
That's really awesome. Thanks for those answers. First question, I'm actually going to bring to you, Sewoong. And currently, in anyone from the panel, feel free to add color to this, but currently it seems that within academia and within the AI industry as a whole, there is stark skepticism of blockchain. In particular, that blockchain has any meaningful benefit to AI. Why is that? And what do your colleagues and students generally think?
Okay, so I think the skepticism looks bigger than it actually is, in the sense that if you talk to any of them one-on-one, they're more excited than skeptical. But as a group together, I think there is a bit of worry about the negative societal effects of blockchain. For example, like all the perhaps financial risks that some people are taking, all the carbon dioxide that's being created for all the compute, and I think they're catching up in the sense that they're sensing that the blockchain is here to stay. It's going to have huge impact on humanity, and there's no way around it. So more good places, good universities are trying to hire the best experts in blockchain. I see that all the time in the call for faculty positions, such that you can see why it will be hard to lure an expert in blockchain to academia for many reasons. So I think it goes both ways, in the sense that perhaps academia is not ready for blockchain yet, but they are open. They're not ready in the sense that, for example, if you're going to run a lab doing blockchain, trying to get a funding from federal agencies for your group is going to be very, very challenging. It's equally challenging as getting funding for your VCs, because those agencies answer to Congress and the taxpayers. And the other way also, I think the blockchain, I don't think needs academia at this point, not necessarily, maybe going down the line. Perhaps it'll build more community. But there are amazing people who are at the intersection of academia and blockchain who's just excelling in what they do, who's probably somewhere in this room. So I think it's just a matter of time that we'll see more convergence.
Got it. Yeah. Thank you. Thanks for answering that.
Like your question originally was skepticism in the academia only, or in general you were saying like in the governments and everywhere, like skepticism about blockchains?
More in academia, but I'm interested in the government side too, actually. I think that's a really, what your thought is.
Because my experience has been that governments are very pro-blockchain, but they are anti-crypto. There are two, kind of different. Like they are anti against this over-financialization of the economies and, over-globalization of their economies. That's where they are more skeptical against. But I think blockchain generally, I have found governments to be very, interested.
They're pretty generally open to it. Yeah.
Yeah, I was just going to comment that it's such a big difference on government side that financial crypto is something that takes control away from their, federal central banking systems and other things. In the AI blockchain space, it literally gives them power back because right now corporations are, exerting this stronger control, and with decentralization, they have the hope to be able to put in regulation and then be able to do things that are nation appropriate. Because people's view on AI is pretty different if you go to a country in one part of the world versus another, as it should be.
DC Builder, you've done work with WorldCoin, which obviously has been playing a strong role in the discussion of AI, human identity, separating human identity. You've done significant work, as you were talking about around ZKML. You all sort of innovated on that, I believe, first as a team in the space. Can you dive a bit into the discussions internally of how you see the current integration with blockchain and identity pushes AI forward, like why it's necessary? Why is what you're doing absolutely necessary for the advancement of AI?
So essentially, like the intersections of blockchain and AI and how we are pushing forward that intersection, correct?
Yeah, and in particular, how that connects to the identity discussion that you ultimately are tackling.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in our case, so we leverage AI, for example, in the biometrics side of things, where we leverage biometrics to essentially create this uniqueness vector or uniqueness measurement that's called an iris code. This iris code is used to check whether a person is unique because you're checking an iris code of a given user against the set of all the other existing iris codes of every single person. And thanks to that, and then using cryptography, right, we're able to essentially take the public key of the given user that was just verified, and we're able to create a proof that a given user owns a private key to a public key in the set of verified users. So that's sort of like where we are leveraging cryptography as well as AI. Like the intersection is the thing that allows us build a better and more robust digital identity ecosystem in the sense that we're now able to prove personhood in a way that's privacy preserving, right? We're leveraging cryptography so that users are able to prove that they're unique users and that they're not doing actions more than once. There's this property called Sybil resistance, meaning that protocols now are able to build systems in which they can gatekeep actions for only unique humans, and the unique humans cannot do the actions more than once. Let's say, like, if you have a voting protocol, now you're able to build a unique voting protocol on chain where you can request that a given proposal can only be voted on by a given user only once, which is something that in the digital ecosystem was not being able to done before. And we've implemented like lots of these like proof of stake type protocols. Before in the past, we have proof of stake protocols that allow us to put some economic security. And thanks to that economic security, we make it Sybil resistant because the resource that is hard to come by is economic value. But that then leaves away all the regular people. So it sort of also acts as a gatekeeping mechanism for the average person, the average user. So that's sort of what we're trying to build, right?
Do you support higher taxation for AI than human identities, or different legal boundaries between the two? Anyone can answer this, but yeah.
I think I don't have the expertise to answer anything in that specific domain, but feel free anyone to answer that.
Yeah.
Can you repeat the question?
So in this world where now we can separate human identity from AI identity, right? Do we see, higher taxation for AI as they own crypto wallets, or different safeguards sort of put in place between the two entities, recognized as different? I'm
not sure. I think those AI models will be deployed by some human being only, so they are nothing more than workers deployed by some human being. So at the end, you are not talking about the taxation of that model itself. You are talking about the taxation of the entity or the human being who's using them. So I'm not sure whether there should be a differential treatment on that. Not sure if somebody else.
Yeah, I think you're 100% right that while AIs are acting as kind of agents for a person, then they're attached to that person's identity and they can go through the normal kind of tax structures. Kind of like if you own a house or you own assets, then you have to pay taxes on rent, or if you're a shareholder at a business. I think the really juicy part of your question, though, is some people will deploy autonomous AIs and they'll just release all of the value of them just to be owned or go into some other mechanism that doesn't go back to them. And then the question comes into, how do we actually manage that? in terms of taxation, and is it even valid that somebody's able to claim any portion of that? On the other hand, if we don't do any claim, then like AIs become economically more powerful than humans. So there has to be
God
some
forbid,
balance.
and God forbid someday some AI comes and it says, hey, I need a different treatment because I'm not owned by any human being. And I think then we have other problems to solve at that point.
I think that'll be a very interesting time for sure. Yeah.
Can
Sandeep, I have a question for you.
Can I double back to one comment on the identity one?
Of
with
course.
DC Builder? I just wanted to say, I mean, I don't know if it's too simplistic, but I like to try to drive home this point, which is a lot of people focus on this ownership side, read, write, own, that kind of thing. But you can't really own data without having ownership of an identity. Because what would ownership mean? And one of the most important components of data, apart from anything that we're going to go off and sell and use as like a kind of a capital intangible asset, that kind of data, is reputation. And that's probably the most important thing that a person can own. And so identity is this key cornerstone. We didn't see it early in crypto because, like DC was saying, early on in crypto with the first generation, if you own the tokens, nobody needed to know anything about you. You own the tokens, they're fungible. But when we get to the point of like data sets, and when we get to the point of do you trust somebody because it's non-collateralized or there's some harm that you wouldn't be able to go back and get retribution in the way that you can on a fully collateralized Aave loan or something, then that's when identity becomes such an essential cornerstone. So it's great WorldCoin is having success. We need a lot more building in the identity space. We're totally underprepared for the need there.
Yeah, that space it's so interesting for sure. Sandeep, a question for you. So you've been known as a prominent builder in this space, in this industry. There's been a lot of use cases that have been built in the Polygon ecosystem and more. But I guess a question here is, when we think we can go all day and talk about like use cases for smart contracts or applications on chain, but on the other side, it's what blockchains can do for AI. I think has been even more interesting to you recently, and I'm curious to hear about that.
Yeah. I mean, contrary to what everybody, like a lot of people who I see, like they are trying to use AI on-chain, like on-chain inferences to do things. I am not a very big believer of that. Like I don't see many use cases of on-chain AI, like, basically maybe like in the DeFi safety and security, you can have it where somebody does a transaction and, like AI checks in the mempool itself. And if something is wrong, AI flips a switch, in the smart contract. But then on layer twos, you could do a transactions at like 400 millisecond, 250 millisecond. I don't think like that's enough time for AI to like flip the switches over there. So then you can have some sort of like design patterns where somebody, instead of doing a DeFi transaction, they do an intent on the chain that, okay, I want to take a loan of XYZ or something, and then an AI checks that this transaction actually goes through without a hack or something, and then, does the other part of the transaction. And then maybe one use case is like, it has been discussed that using AI as like DAO agents. But apart from these and like something with this like, deep fakes where you can post these videos and some you can have a trusted like kind of AI governed by a community saying that this is fake or this is not. Like these are few use cases which I see, but beyond that I don't see many use cases of on-chain AI. Like AI is interacting on-chain is a different game. Like AI as a separate agent with its own address, identity, whatever it is, and doing on-chain transactions, that's going to be plenty. But I don't think like, on-chain, for on-chain provenance and on-chain AI, on-chain inference is going to have a large market, at least I don't see it right now. But I do see a big, place for blockchains in solving, in kind of building AI. Let me say it this way, like in terms of building or training AI in a more trustless manner, where like, community or, a group of people can decide that this data gets to train this or train this model with this data only, and ensures that there is no toxic data, there is no bias and all those things, this kind of stuff. And basically like also having crypto incentive models somehow where communities can come together, because otherwise like these large AI companies, like I think there is a favorite, common saying now that if you are building a foundational model, if you don't have less than $1 billion in funding, it's kind of a non-starter. So there's no way like, more and more startups will catch up to this. And only way that, some of these community-based systems can catch up to this is open source and crypto incentives. So I think their blockchain can be used very heavily. And, that's an area where I'm like super interested in.
That's really cool. DC Builder, do you have any things to add to that, or your own perspectives on that as well?
I think what Sandeep has said is mostly right, in the sense that crypto is not necessarily like, or AI is not necessarily an agent that's active within blockchains, or there's not that many things that you can yet do where like you have AI interactivity within blockchains. Some people, for example, use AI to set parameters in DeFi protocols, right? Like if you have a risk model, an AI model is able to update risk parameters based on some like random forest model or some exploration or optimization problems, essentially where AI is a better fit. But I've not seen AI agents as well, personally. Where I do think, just to reemphasize the sentiment that Sandeep has expressed, is like crypto is useful to help build these AI systems in a more open way, right? You're able to make the AI systems accountable. You're able to create proofs that someone created or someone ran a model on some data and produced an output, right? I can create the entire execution proof that, okay, I have some input X, I put in some model M, I have output Y, I can create the entire proof of that. And any user consuming that model can have the entire provenance proof and trace that they indeed ran some foundational model on some data that they actually gave the API or whatever. And also just to build the systems themselves, right? Like I can create an incentive network where I can, for example, help people train models. Or I can, for example, make it so that I incentivize people to provide compute, so that I can incentivize people to give me their hardware, and I can create a marketplace for either hardware or models so that you can coordinate people in a more efficient way as opposed to traditional legacy systems, which are a lot harder to coordinate because everything is legal-based, everything is contract-based. If I make it permissionless, then that's sort of where crypto is really a lot more useful. So I think like those directionally are the ones that make more sense currently, though I'm free to be surprised in the coming years by like the things that people here and elsewhere build.
Got it, thank you. Yeah, go for it, Robert.
I just want to dovetail one comment on top of both people, but especially Sandeep, what you said on the open side. That I think a superpower of that blockchain can help add to AI is on the open source side, blockchain and the value chains of blockchain allow there to be a global network effect across all open source AI. And we don't see that in the Web 2 world because there's no reason for an OpenAI and a Google to share their network effects. They may kind of partially have that, but in the blockchain space, assuming we've got things worked out by WorldCoin and others on identity, reputation, data sets being portable, owned by people, models also being something that you can port around different parts of the system, you get this combined network effect, which has the ability to surpass anything a single corporation can do with walled gardens of data and identity capture.
Robert, what about from the hardware side, by the way? Thoughts on just how blockchain can bring benefit to that from an AI's perspective? Yeah.
I mean, blockchain doesn't particularly, you can't say that blockchain is going to cause the hardware side to have fundamental improvements. Hardware is what hardware is. We saw, in the 2000s, a really dramatic shift from private data centers to public cloud because sharing resources unlocked a lot of capabilities that didn't exist before. It kind of collapsed back from being a whole bunch of OSs with proprietary hardware to being 3 OSs, Amazon Web Services, Azure, and Google Cloud. And those all became, capturing their API, and they became hardware walled gardens. We're seeing now with AI that, AI, everybody's building their own data set. You'll hear it at, Stability and, OpenAI and Google, building their own chips, building their own hardware. And we're kind of going back to the 90s where it's inefficient from a hardware space because you have all of these different systems which are not able to kind of fungibly move around as needed, less elastic, innovation slows down. So I think decentralized physical infrastructure, DePIN, has the ability to get us back to this very fluid hardware market and a much faster feature velocity than we're getting into now. So I think that's where the effect will be.
What do you think, Sewoong, regarding that and the whole DePIN thing in general? I'd actually love to hear your thought.
Right. I guess the cost structure of these GPUs is such that if you're gonna build 100 billion size models, then you couldn't do it on a cloud. You'll be making other people a lot of money. So you're doing in-house with your hardware. So I think there are a lot of things that needs to happen before. Or the price is going down, the model perhaps size is going down, maybe, and a lot of different steps, milestones that need to happen for DePIN to be, I guess, a viable option.
Got it, yeah. That makes a lot of sense. I guess that brings me to my next question. Anyone can answer this, and generally something that that I've been interested to ask people. So Andrej Karpathy of OpenAI tweeted about the importance of decentralizing. Also, Elon Musk agreed with that tweet, if you all remember this. Mark Zuckerberg has been discussing pushing towards making AI more open source as a whole. Do you all think as an industry we're able to even compete if their focus is suddenly pushed towards decentralization as sort of a societal push? Sorry, anyone can answer that. I got too excited there.
I actually lost track of your question and I went into my own thought process.
Yeah.
Can you repeat?
How can we compete in the blockchain industry if Mark Zuckerberg or OpenAI ends up realizing they have to decentralize to be accepted societally? The laws force them to do it.
But if they do that, then they become part of blockchain industry. Then we don't need to compete with them. We need to work with them then. Right? The whole point is like they don't want to do, many of them don't want to do. I think Mark Zuckerberg wants to do it, and it'll be one of the best things to happen for blockchain industry if Mark Zuckerberg or Elon Musk actually picks up either some team building in the space or their own division to kind of explore this part. Like that will be a big thumbs up for the whole blockchain industry. So I think that's good. It's pretty good.
Cool, awesome. I think this wraps up the time in the panel. Thank you so much for joining us, and yeah.
Thanks everyone.